Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to make a pillow top. And you've seen my ones that I made on Facebook, and so this is just a little tutorial showing you the basic steps on how to do that. So I'm going to turn the camera around and we'll get started. It's actually a pretty simple process. So I've already made my design. And in this case, that's my design. And I knew I've already cut the piece, but I'll show you how I did that. I made a template because I knew that I was going to be making quite a few of these, and I was having a little trouble figuring out every single time how to center each one. And making a template made it go a lot faster. And then I just make sure there's the same amount on either side and the top and the bottom. Then I mark it with a fabric marking pen. This one's really good. It's the Frixion, Frixion, however you pronounce that, by Pilot, that I got at my local quilt shop. And I mark all four sides like that. Then I cut it using in this case, I have a 12.5-inch ruler that I use to cut it. That works out really well. So you can basically cut two sides at a time, but you're also verifying that it's squared up when you're doing that by using this type of ruler. I have it in a bigger size also because I find sometimes I'm squaring up stuff that's pretty big. So very handy one. The 12.5 though I use the most. So the next step is to do your borders. And in this case, because we know this piece is 10.5, you want to cut your borders for the sides to 10.5. And I've done that already, and just to show you what it's going to look like. And one of the things you want to pay attention to is if you're using fabric that's directional or one way. In this case, the trees do run one way. So always make sure your trees always have their tops at the top. You don't want to be ripping that out. Now, for all my seam allowances, I do 1/4-inch seams because I'm an avid quilter as well as a new embroiderer. And so you just basically lay those on either side and stitch them down. Once you've done that, then you take it to your ironing board and you press it out so it's nice and flat. Always make sure you're pushing into the seam as you're doing that. That just gives you a nice crisp edge. At this point, I don't usually spray it or steam it because that can cause your fabric to stretch. I wait till the very end to do that. Once that's put together, then the next step will be adding your top and bottom borders. Again, you want to think about your direction and make sure that all your treetops are running to the top or whatever it is you have that's directional. And in this case, I already cut the borders 16.5 because I know that's what my finished size is going to be. And so by cutting them the same amount, it makes sure that your final product is square. This is true for any time you're putting a border on anything or even putting railings on a block or whatever. It works out really well. One of the great things I learned in one of the classes I took when I started quilting. Actually, I still take classes, even though I've been doing this for a little over 4 years now. I find it really helpful to talk to other people. And if you have any experienced quilters, piecers, embroidery people in your life, or if you have a local quilt shop, make sure you're taking advantage of their wealth of knowledge. I've taught classes at a Quilter's Corner in Erie, Colorado for the last couple of years, and it's been really fun. And so, I often learn as much from my students as I do as I teach them, which is really fun. So once you've gotten this all sewn on and pressed, now it's time to do the back of the quilt. Now for my backs, I don't want to bother with a zip or anything. So what I'm doing is an overlapping back. And the way you do that is you cut your two back pieces. In this case, I already have them cut. And again, remember, because this is directional, you want to think about that as you're doing your finished edge that'll be on the open edge here. And what I do is turn under an inch twice, and that seems to give it a nice rich feel. If you do it too narrow, it just feels kind of cheap. So I try not to do that if I have enough fabric. I also want to make sure that I allow plenty for the overlap, because I found if you don't, you wind up putting it on there and it gapes in the back, which I find really annoying. So usually what I do for quilts actually pretty much anything up to about a 20-inch pillow, I take half of the pillow top, which in this case would be 8, and I add 4 or 5 inches. And that gives you a nice amount of overlap. So then when you're going to do your pressing, you want to say, okay, this is going to be my top, this is going to be my bottom. So you want to press under 1 inch there and another inch here. One of the tools that I found really helpful for that is this Clover product. This is iron safe. So you literally put it down, put your fabric down, put it on your piece of fabric, line it up. Say you want to do an inch, you line it up with that 1 inch line, and it's great. You just press right over it. Never do this with any of your plastic rulers, of course, but this works really well and makes it a lot faster than measuring along the edge or eyeballing it, which can not turn out so well. So once you've done the one fold, like that, and usually I'll go back and give it another little press. I'm big on pressing things. I had a lot of years of 4-H and judged competition, so I'm very particular about certain things. And I found that pressing can hide a lot of mistakes. So then just do your second fold down, and then I take that to the machine and I stitch it down. Now the one that's going to be on top, if you really wanted to and it would show, because some of these fabrics it wouldn't really show very well, or it would just be too much. But if you had a really plain fabric and you wanted to, you could actually use one of your decorative stitches from your sewing machine to finish off that edge. You only need to do it on the one that's going to be the top part, because that's the part that's going to show. Now, when you go to lay this out to sew it together, that would be our next step. And let me show you that. We'll get this out of the way. So, let's see. We're going to lay this out like this. So this is the top part. It should be up. These two parts should be right side up. And I'm going to use this one since I didn't prep another piece. So basically you're going to lay this out, line up your edges together, the top and the bottom. Of course, this is cut a little bit wider. This pillow top is actually only 14 inches. So you want to overlap those so that these edges line up, so the backing and the top line up. Then what you're going to do is sew 1/4 inch all the way around. Make sure when you're doing this that you have right sides together. It is a pain to rip all that out if you sew one side up and one side, or both sides up, I guess. Did that one time. It was not fun. So then once you have it sewn, then just clip your corners a little bit to get rid of some of the bulk. Don't worry about your seams. One of the things you can do if you want to hide those seams is top stitch at 1/4 inch. Then you're going to turn this Once it's sewn, you're going to turn it right side out. And the first thing you're going to want to do is poke out those corners. Now, a lot of people have different ways of doing it, but my favorite tool for doing that is called a point turner. And that's the one I have. It is very, very old, a little bit dirty. It is so old, it is from Stretch and Sew when I used to do classes there. So then what you do is just poke out your corners as best you can, being careful to not poke out all the way, because that is not a good thing. The other reason why you don't clip it off too close. Then, here's a very important step I found that works really well. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. And make sure you can see my ironing board. There we go. Excuse me. So, to press this, I pull it as flat as I can. And if you've ever sewn anything like this, you know that it's kind of a pain to get your edges out nice and flat. And I used to go along and pin every few inches, especially when I was doing clothing and making a collar or something like that. It was very much a pain. But what I found that you can do with things like this is just put a little tuck in it, take the point of your iron and just press right along that seam. Then when you pull it down, give it a little tug here and there, give it a nice press, and it is ready to go. Do that on all four sides. Check and make sure your back is nice and smooth, and you're ready to stuff it with your pillow. So I bought 14-inch pillows and 16-inch pillows at Amazon. Had a great deal on them, and got a 4-pack of the 14-inch ones, very reasonably priced, and really decent quality pillows. So just shove that in there, making sure you don't pull it too hard because you don't want to rip your fabric. And then make sure you're pushing it down into your corners, because that also improves the look of it. Pull your back so it's nice and flat, not gaping. All our trees are running in the correct direction. And there you have another pillow, all finished, ready to go. I hope this helps, and happy sewing. And if you have any questions, just let me know, either on Facebook or private message me is also fine. And happy sewing.